In Season 21, we've given you a Void Titan build that focuses on having constant overshield and buffing our shotguns. We've also given you a Solar Titan build with high damage and the ability to solo activities. Today, we're going over another potent build for Titans, and that's going to be the Grenadier build. With this build, you're going to be making constant orbs and outputting mass amounts of damage to solo and multiple targets. This build has the potential to rival the old pre-nerf Hoyle build, so if you like this build, remember to hit the like button and subscribe to see more broken builds like this one. Let's jump right on into it. The main focus of this build will be to throw as many pulse grenades as possible. One of the main things that will be fueling this build is going to be the exotic chest Armamentarium. This allows us to have a second grenade. While this does sound basic, because of how much grenade energy we're able to generate, it's super useful since it allows us to start storing up a backup grenade. We're choosing to use the pulse grenade not only because it's super strong and easy to use, but also because it pairs especially well with the aspect Touch of Thunder, which makes our pulse grenades create ionic traces and do increased damage over time. We then grab the Fragments, Spark of Magnitude, and Shock, and these will make our grenades last longer and jolt targets, meaning we can hold two grenades that stay longer, dealing more damage over time, and jolt for extra damage, and create ionic traces, giving us back more and more ability energy. This build is actually nuts, and it's so fun to use. Let's break it down. Looking at the super and the abilities, I still like Thunder Crash over Fist of Havoc since I find more scenarios that I want to do a lot of damage to one target. Plus, if I remember right, there's that one chest that we can still hot swap for double damage. This means high boss damage, and who doesn't want to be on top of the leaderboard? First up for our class ability, I'm choosing Thrusters. They have a quick cooldown and offer more movement. Plus, they go great with the armor mod Powerful Attraction, making it easier to pick up orbs around you. You could choose to go with Tower Barricade if you are doing a harder activity. Being able to create more cover for yourself can be very helpful. For a melee ability, this time I'm choosing Thunderclap. Seismic Strike definitely still has its place, and if you're more comfortable with it, then use that instead. For our grenade, I'm choosing Pulse Grenade as we mentioned before. We're picking this because of the synergy with the rest of this build. It does high damage and gives us back a lot of ability energy. Moving on to aspects, the first aspect we're going to be taking is Knockout. This makes it so our melee attacks start health regen and you become amplified. Not only does this give us an ability to start health regen, which is amazing for this build,
you're amazing.
But also becoming amplified is crucial in this season because there are more and more mods that are going to help you because you're amplified. The second aspect we're taking is Touch of Thunder. This is the part that's going to buff our grenades, and specifically the pulse grenade is going to start creating ionic traces and dealing more damage over time. These ionic traces are going to give us back 12.5% of our abilities, which is going to start funding more and more grenade energy as well as melee and thruster energy for us. Plus, the add-on benefit that it is going to do more damage over time is great when you're in a boss phase. Taking a look at the fragments, the first fragment is going to be Spark of Magnitude. This increases the duration on our powerful pulse grenade. Because of this increased duration, we're going to be outputting more damage and creating more ionic traces, giving us back more ability energy. The second fragment I'm taking is Spark of Shock. This gives our arc grenades the ability to jolt targets. Not only is this going to do more damage, but it's also going to be intrinsic anti-overload for champions. For our third fragment, we're taking Spark of Resistance, making it so that when we're surrounded, we're more resistant to incoming damage. Since we are trying to move around with this build, it does become critical to keep that damage resistant up, and there will be more mods that will be increasing our damage resistance even further. Since we don't have access to restoration or overshield, this is going to be crucial to staying alive. For our last and final fragment, I'm choosing Spark of Feedback. This makes it so that when we take melee damage, it increases our outgoing melee damage. Since melees do start health regen, I find it very often that I'm wanting to punch a target to start my health regen, and if I do take melee damage, now my melee is going to do even more damage, so I can potentially take out a yellow bar in one hit. Mainly, this is also going to add 10 resilience, which is going to buff our overall stats and make it a little bit easier to get 100s where we want it. You could think about Spark of Ions. This would make it so that defeating jolted targets creates ionic traces, but since we already have a grenade that's going to be creating a ton of ionic traces and be getting a ton of ability energy back, I don't really find it necessary for this build. That's the overarching subclass and abilities. Let's take a look at what mods can improve this build. First up, our stat mods. Like most builds, we're going to want to take resilience as our number one stat. This is going to give us up to an extra 30% damage resistance, which is key for surviving high level content. Plus, as a Titan, this will also lower our class ability, meaning more grenades for this build.
I want more.
The second stat I'm going to be focusing is going to be Discipline. Since we can hold two grenades, we obviously want our grenades to come back as quick as possible since this is a Grenadier build. If we can get our Discipline up to 100, this will bring our cooldown to about a minute. The third stat I'm looking at is going to be Recovery. You could choose to go with Strength. Mobility and Intellect are definitely not ones that you're going to want to take for this build. I find Recovery to be a little bit better because I'm not sure if most people know this, but Recovery does two things for you. It starts your health regen quicker, and it makes it so you recover health at a quicker rate. Since we can start our health regen with a melee final blow, though, having the quicker health regen allows us to gain back more health if we take damage soon after. For our armor mods, first up we're looking at our helmet mods. We're going to be taking Ashes to Assets. This is a Grenadier build, so grenades are going to grant us super energy on final blows, and since we can throw a ton of grenades, this is going to be awesome for getting our super back even quicker. I'm also going to be taking Heavy Ammo Finder. This means more heavy ammo, but it can be replaced with Dynamo if you do like to use your super like crazy. I find most activities I want heavy ammo over more super energy. Choose whichever one you want in this case. And last up, I'm taking Harmonic Weapon Siphon, meaning rapid matching elemental gun kills are going to create orbs. This can be replaced with Heavy Ammo Scout if you're doing raids or dungeons. For our arms, first up, we're taking Grenade Kickstart. This makes it so you gain grenade energy back when you use your grenade. This amount depends on the amount of armor charge you have. This is huge since we're getting roughly 15 to 30% of our grenade back every time we use it. If you want to use surge mods for a DPS phase, I recommend switching this out for momentum transfer or just hot swapping and not using your grenade right before you go into the DPS phase. We're also taking Firepower. This makes our grenades create orbs on final blows. This is great since we use our grenades so much, we're going to be creating mass amounts of orbs for us and our allies. You can honestly switch this out for heavy-handed if you want to, since this season does allow the cheaper melee mods. Since we do get with knockout after a kill or breaking an enemy shield, our melees are going to be considered a powered melee, meaning we can punch back to back to back to create orbs. So if you want to choose that one, go ahead. I like Firepower a little bit better because we are throwing our grenades a ton. And our third and final mod for our arms is going to be Impact Induction. This makes it so melee attacks reduce grenade cooldown. We want to use our other abilities to help fuel the machine that is the Grenadier Titan.
Pure fuel! Pure fuel!
Plus, now we get health and grenade energy on our Thunderclap. Win-win. For our chest piece, you only have a few options that are helpful, so I'd recommend 3 resistance mods. I typically choose a Harmonic, a Solar or Void, and a Concussive Dampener. This will give large coverage for most activities you do and will help keep you alive longer. Most enemies have one of 3 elements, Arc, Void, or Solar, when they're doing damage. Hence why we're using 2 of these, and since we don't need to get as up close and personal, Concussive is our best option to help us out all around. This will give us an extra 30% damage resistance on things like Hive Boomer Knights and when they throw fire. Let's take a look at the legs. The first mod I'm taking is Absolution, making orbs reduce cooldowns of all of our abilities. This will give us roughly 5% for all of our abilities and is great overall because since we are using our grenades to create more orbs for us, we can then pick this up to get back both our melee, class ability, and more grenade energy, fueling the machine even further. I also like to pair this with Innervation, making it so that orbs reduce grenade cooldown by another 10%. So now when we pick up an orb, we're going to get 15% grenade energy and 5% for both our class ability and for our melee. And the third one I'm picking is Recuperation. Orbs will now give us a little boost of health, and since we can start health regen with our melee, getting that little boost of health back up to where we need to is amazing. Running surge mods is definitely important for boss phases, so what I like to do with this build is have one pair of legs that has this trio, Absolution, Innervation, and Recuperation, and then another set that has a set of 3 surge mods that's specifically for whatever power weapon I'm using. For example, if I'm using the Hothead, I'll have one pair of legs with this trio and another pair with 3 arc surges. And then when it comes to boss phase, I quickly swap over to that pair of legs and bam, ready to go. Moving on to our mark. The first one I'm taking is Bomber. This reduces grenade cooldown when using our class ability, and this will give us about 12% grenade energy. Again, amazing since we are trying to use our grenades as quick as possible. Our class ability already has a pretty short cooldown, and since we're creating ionic traces, that's feeding that back up with energy. But when we use one ability, it boosts the other. We're also pairing this with Distribution, making it so it reduces all of our cooldowns when we use our class ability near targets, which is going to be about 4% for all of our abilities. I also like to pair this with Powerful Attraction, meaning when we use our class ability, it collects orbs nearby us. With all of these mods, we can make it so that we can throw 1 to 2 grenades, killing at least 1 target. Our Kickstart mod will give us back 15% energy. We then use our melee to start health regen and get back 20% more grenade energy. We immediately use our thrusters to collect the created orbs, giving us 15% for at least 1 orb and another 16% just for using our thrusters, meaning we're getting back 66% of our grenade just from the mods, and on some occasions it will be more than topping out at around 96%, depending on how many orbs are around. That's roughly 1 whole grenade for cycling our abilities. This also doesn't even mention that our grenades are creating ionic traces in the meantime. Most occasions I'm getting at least 2 ionic traces for hitting a major, meaning we're getting another 12% per ability for each ionic trace. Now you can see how powerful and easy it is to get your grenades back with this build. It's insanely strong. Since this season is focused on arc, this is the time to use this build. Let's talk seasonal artifact mods. In column 2, we want to take arc authorized mods. Melee isn't necessary for this build, but you can take it if you do want to use heavy-handed. In column 3, we want both electric armor and thunderous retort. Electric armor allows us to stay amplified for longer, which is useful with other mods, and we become amplified by melee final blows, which are easy to trigger. Thunderous retort gives us an extra 30% damage on our super while amplified or critically wounded. Now, I'm not 100% certain that this works with T-Crash. If anything, it will just buff the initial impact, which is most of the damage anyway. Moving on to column 4, we want amped up. This offers us another 35% damage resistance while amplified, which does stack with the rest of our resistance mods and resilience stat. Amplification is super easy to proc since all we have to do is melee a target and get a final blow with that melee. We do have thunderclap, so we have an AoE melee, which means we can easily use this at a distance to gain that amplification and hide behind cover if we need to. In column 5, things get a little spicy.
Why is it spicy?
We want to take both lightning strikes twice and shock and awe. Lightning strikes twice says that after we throw a grenade, we gain increased grenade recharge for a short time, which can be extended by any arc final blow. We already see how much grenade energy we get back, and this only compounds on top of the rest of our ability energy that we're getting back. We also want to take shock and awe, which says arc final blows while amplified summon a burst of lightning that damages and jolts targets. I don't think people realize, but this perk is literally point contact for all arc final blows. No, you don't get your melee back, but you are causing lightning damage and jolting targets. I've seen this activate on uncharged melees because of knockout. This makes all of your arc damage super powerful. This build has you using your abilities constantly, so weapons have a little bit more free range. This also makes it super easy to take your highest boss DPS weapons and not really have to worry about it. A few of the guns that I like for these slots. For the first slot, I like to take the new Pacific Epitaph. This is the grenade launcher from the new dungeon. It can roll with demo, which is going to give us more grenade energy and make it super easy to reload since we can throw grenades like crazy. This is a great ad clearing weapon. Another great option for the slot is going to be Wither Horde. This is amazing for boss phases, so now that we can throw our grenades as much as we want and clear out ads with ease with our abilities, you can take something like Wither Horde and not even have to shoot it at a single enemy until you get to the boss fight if you want to. It will also give you great ad clearing potential if you want to use it as a regular weapon as well. For our energy slot, a few weapons that I like to take. The first one's going to be Forbearance. This is the best ad clear weapon by far, and since it is buffed with our artifact mods, making it cause even more damage, you can get rolls on this weapon that will actually decimate the field. It's great for ad clearing. Another great option is going to be the Cold Heart. It does decent damage, creates ionic traces at its peak damage level, and is great for double special loadout since trace rifles kind of act like primary weapons. This will create more ability energy for us and can be used for things that normal weapons like SMGs, ARs can be used for. If you don't want to run double special, you could choose to take the Akilos SMG. It's a great all-around weapon. Any other primary with Volt Shot can also be used instead since Volt Shot does pair very well with this build. If I'm going for the highest DPS, I might choose to take the Iterative Loop. We can use this to apply Volt Shot to a boss for high damage during boss phases. It's also great for clearing out majors or champions. For our third and final slot, the first one I'm looking at is Cold Comfort. Cold Comfort paired with the new grenade launcher from the dungeon makes this a potent all-around build. You have high ad clearing abilities, and with the wave grenade launcher, it's easy to clear out ads. I also like to pair this with Cold Heart, meaning we're going to get back even more ability energy, and this will kill most enemies. With this rocket, I'm choosing Envious Assassin with either Chill Clip or Bait and Switch, and this can put out massive damage. This will also offer us room if we want to run Stasis Surge mods on that other pair of legs. We're now getting a buff to Stasis for both our rocket launcher and our ad clearing weapon. Another great option is going to be the Hothead. It's still an amazing all-around rocket for outputting mass amounts of damage, and when paired with the Forbearance and a primary such as Wither Horde or Osteo or any other primary that's very strong, it makes your build very strong. Plus it offers room for surge mods. Another slept on option is going to be the Grand Overture. It's still a very good option for high burst DPS when you prep rockets. It's the same case scenario as Hothead since you can offer surge mods for that arc damage if you pair it with something like Forbearance. And the last heavy I'll talk about is going to be Thunderlord. It's very easy to use. It's both an ad clearing machine and pretty good for DPS phases. It's not the best, but it is consistent, and it's great for people that might not have some of these other weapons like Grand Overture, Hothead, or Cold Comfort. So if all you have is Thunderlord, use that. It's pretty good. With this build, you have so much ad clearing potential because of our super strong and super easy to get back grenades. We create a ton of ionic traces, and we use use mods to boost the amount of ability energy that we're generating. Because we create so much grenade energy, we take an exotic that'll hold 2 grenades. This also opens up boss damage phases to be able to use a rocket that has demolitionist, since we can use our grenade twice to reload our rocket and do more damage with our grenades. Not to mention that when it comes time to do boss damage, hot swap to the Curse of the Falling Star to do massive damage and then swap back for the grenade cycle. This build is very potent for both ad clearing and DPS phases. And more importantly, it's fun to use. I'll be using this build for the rest of Season 21 as my Arc Titan build. Let me know your thoughts of the build. What would you change or how would you improve it? That's it from me. Peace out.